All right, everybody, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And this time things are getting a little turbulent. We're talking budget airlines, specifically Spirit Airlines.
Oh, yeah.
As you guys have probably seen plastered all over the news, Spirit Airlines has filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, they have.
And so we're going to take a deep dive into that today. We've got a whole bunch of articles from Forbes, Euronews, WFTV, a bunch of sources. And we're going to try to figure out, what does this mean? What led up to this point? And where do we go from here?
Exactly.
What does it mean for the airline industry? What does it mean for you and your travel plans?
Right. And for the future of budget travel.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, is this the end of cheap flights, or is this
a new beginning?
a new beginning for something?
Yeah. So let's start off with the doom and gloom. The articles paint a pretty stark picture of Spirit's financial situation.
Yeah, it's not looking great.
Over $2.5 billion in losses since 2020.
Wow.
Stock value plummeted 97% since 2018.
Oof.
Over $1 billion in upcoming debt payments.
Yeah, this isn't a sudden collapse, though.
Right. Spirit Airlines has been on a slow decline for a while, with several factors.
Right. It's been a slow motion train wreck for a while now.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's dig into that a little bit. What's the Spirit model, and why has it been struggling?
Okay. So the Spirit model, if you want to call it that, is essentially ultra low-cost travel.
Right.
Rock-bottom fares. Nickel and diming for every extra imaginable.
Tiny seats.
Yeah, the tiny seats, the infamous tiny seats. And for a time, this was remarkably successful.
Right.
I mean, it even pushed the bigger airlines to start offering those basic economy fares.
Like, I remember when, basic economy wasn't even a thing, and now it's
It's everywhere.
yeah. Every major airline has it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Spirit was really one of the pioneers of that.
Right.
But then the market shifted, as it always does.
Right.
The articles talk about rising costs across the board, especially labor costs.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt them.
Especially for an airline that operates on razor-thin profit margins like Spirit.
Right. They just don't have the same wiggle room as some of the bigger airlines.
Yeah. It's like every time I see a Spirit employee, I'm like, man, are they getting paid enough for this?
Right.
Exactly.
They're dealing with so much.
Yeah. And the passengers aren't always the most pleasant.
No, not always.
And then on top of that, the articles also point out that the premium travel market has bounced back much stronger after the pandemic.
Yeah, that's right. People are willing to shell out a little extra for comfort and convenience after being cooped up for so long.
Makes sense.
So that leaves budget carriers like Spirit in a bit of a tough spot.
Yeah, so costs are going up. Their target market is shrinking.
Exactly.
Not a good combination.
No, not at all.
And then here's a real head-scratcher for me. One of the articles mentions that Spirit's passenger numbers actually increased, but their revenue per mile dropped by almost 20%.
That is interesting. So more people are flying Spirit.
But they're paying less.
Yeah. Why is that?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes. Well, there are a few possibilities. Maybe passengers are just becoming more price sensitive.
Yeah, with everything going on with the economy, that wouldn't surprise me.
Right. Or maybe those basic economy fares offered by the bigger airlines are starting to chip away at Spirit's market share.
Right. They're getting squeezed from both sides.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like they were trying to find a way out through mergers.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those? First with Frontier, and then that whole battle with JetBlue.
Oh, yeah, the merger sagas.
The merger saga.
Those didn't really work out too well for
No,
them.
they didn't. So let's talk about that, particularly the JetBlue situation.
Yeah, why did that one fall apart?
Well, the JetBlue case is really interesting because it was blocked by a federal judge
Oh, wow.
on antitrust grounds.
Okay.
The concern was that merging those two airlines would reduce competition and potentially lead to higher fares.
Right. They didn't want to create like a mega airline.
Exactly.
That would just like control the market.
Right. So now with Spirit declaring bankruptcy, it raises an interesting question. Could this actually pave the way for a new merger attempt?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah. We'll have to dig into that a little bit more.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve deeper into Spirit's financial woes, those failed mergers, and what this all means for the future of budget travel. So stay tuned.
So let's dig a little deeper into some of the numbers from these articles. One of the things that really jumped out at me was that Spirit hasn't actually turned a profit since 2019.
Ouch.
Yeah. And in the first half of 2024 alone, they lost over $335 million.
Wow. That's a big hole to dig out of.
It is. It really underscores the depth of their financial woes. The pandemic obviously threw the entire industry into a tailspin.
Right.
But even as travel demand began to recover, Spirit faced a unique set of challenges.
Right.
And one of the articles highlights rising labor costs as a major factor.
Yeah, everybody's dealing with rising labor costs these days.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But it seems to have hit Spirit particularly hard. And I wonder if that's because their whole model is built around those rock bottom fares.
Yeah, they got to keep costs so incredibly tight.
Exactly. So when labor costs go up, it puts immense pressure on their already thin profit margins.
Yeah, it's like a house of cards. The whole thing could just crumble.
Right. And it creates this ripple effect. Rising costs lead to lower profits, which limits their ability to invest in things like improving the customer experience or upgrading their fleet.
And that brings us to another interesting point that several articles touch on passenger satisfaction.
Oh, yeah.
Spirit, along with Frontier, consistently ranks at the bottom of those surveys.
Not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, cramped seating fees for everything, a lack of amenities.
Yeah, it's not exactly a recipe for happy flyers.
No.
And here's where things get even more complex because, as we mentioned earlier, the premium travel market has really taken off post-pandemic.
Right.
People are willing to pay more for a more comfortable and convenient flying experience. So this shift in consumer preferences puts budget airlines like Spirit in a very, very difficult position.
It's like they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Exactly. They need to keep fares low to attract customers.
Right.
But they also need to find ways to improve the customer experience to stay competitive.
Yeah, and maybe offer a few more perks.
Right. It's a tough balancing act.
And they were trying to address this a little bit, right? They were experimenting with some of those bundled fares.
They were. Yeah, I saw an article about that where they were including extras like seat selection, baggage allowance, even snacks and drinks.
Right.
It was a pretty significant departure from their traditional bare bones approach.
It was.
But it seems like it wasn't enough to really turn the tide financially.
Right, and then they had those engine issues, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Remember the recall of those Pratt and Whitney engines?
Right. They had to ground all those planes.
Yeah, they had to ground dozens of their Airbus jets. It was a logistical nightmare.
And a financial blow.
A huge financial blow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like it was one thing after another for Spirit.
And then on top of all that, you have those failed merger attempts.
Right. First with Frontier, then that whole saga with JetBlue,
Yeah.
which, as we talked about, was blocked by a federal judge due to antitrust concerns.
Right.
So all of these factors combined, the rising costs, shifting consumer preferences, operational setbacks, failed mergers.
It's like a perfect storm.
Exactly. It all culminated in this decision to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
Okay, so let's talk about Chapter 11. What does that actually mean?
Right. So one of the articles described it as a chance to hit the reset button.
Okay.
It allows a company to restructure its debts, reorganize its operations, and hopefully emerge as a healthier, more sustainable business.
Right, but it's not a guaranteed success story, is it?
No, not at all. It's a complex process with no guarantees.
Right.
It requires careful planning, strategic decision-making, and, frankly, a bit of luck. There's always the risk that the company won't be able to overcome its challenges and will ultimately be faced to liquidate its assets.
So what happens to Spirit now? What are the things we should be looking for as this bankruptcy process unfolds?
Well, one of the first things is how they plan to address their massive debt.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Chapter 11 gives them some leverage to negotiate with creditors, but they'll need to come up with a plan that's acceptable to everyone involved.
And that's not always easy.
No, it's a delicate process.
Yeah.
And beyond the financial restructuring, they'll also need to make some tough decisions about their operations.
Right.
We already talked about the pilot furloughs and the sale of some of their aircraft.
Right.
Those are clear signs that they're trying to cut costs, but those are probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
They'll likely have to make even more difficult choices to stay afloat.
Right, like what kinds of things?
Well, they'll have to evaluate their route network, their fleet size, their staffing levels.
Right.
Everything is on the table. They need to find ways to become more efficient and ultimately profitable.
It's like they're trying to rebuild the airplane while it's still in flight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a high-stakes situation with a lot riding on their ability to navigate this process successfully.
It is. And, of course, we can't forget about the impact this is having on passengers.
Right. What does this mean for people who have already booked flights or are thinking about booking with Spirit?
Exactly. What does this mean for travelers?
Right. Well, for now, Spirit is saying it's business as usual.
Okay.
They're assuring passengers that their existing bookings and loyalty points are safe
Right.
and that they plan to continue operating their current schedule. But
It's not
given
like
the circumstances, I mean, with all the cost-cutting measures and the uncertainty surrounding their future,
Yeah.
I have to wonder if disruptions are inevitable.
Yeah, especially with the holidays coming up.
Exactly. People are already stressed about holiday travel.
Right.
This just adds another layer of complexity.
So if you're flying Spirit anytime soon,
Yeah.
be prepared.
Be prepared, stay informed, read the fine print on your tickets,
Yeah.
and be prepared for the possibility of changes or cancellations.
Yeah, have backup plans.
Always a good idea.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture here.
Ah.
If Spirit shrinks or even goes away completely, what does that mean for the airline industry as a whole?
Right. What happens to the pressure on other airlines to keep fares low?
Yeah. Does this mean we're all going to be paying more for flights?
Well, it's possible that other budget carriers could step in to fill the void.
Right.
There's always room for disruption in this industry.
Right.
A new player could emerge with an even more innovative approach to low-cost travel.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Or maybe existing budget airlines like Frontier or Allegiant will see this as an opportunity to expand their market share.
Right. Like a land grab.
Exactly. But there's also the flip side to consider.
Okay.
We could see further consolidation in the market.
Right.
If Spirit weakens or disappears, it could create an opening for the larger airlines to scoop up routes, passengers, even assets.
And that could lead to less competition, which could ultimately mean higher fares for everyone.
That's definitely a concern. And it's something that regulators will be watching very closely.
Right.
Antitrust concerns were a major factor in blocking that JetBlue-Spirit merger.
Right.
So any future consolidation attempts will likely face similar scrutiny.
Okay, so let's put on our prediction hats here for a minute.
Mm.
What are some potential scenarios for Spirit's future?
Okay, so scenario 1, they successfully navigate Chapter 11,
Okay.
emerge with a leaner, more efficient operation, and regain their footing in the market.
Right.
Maybe they even find a new merger partner that doesn't raise those antitrust flags.
Okay, so a comeback story.
A comeback story.
All right, scenario 2.
Scenario 2, they struggle to turn things around,
Okay.
continue to lose money, and are ultimately forced to liquidate their assets.
So the sad ending.
Yeah, the not-so-happy ending.
Okay. And scenario 3.
Scenario 3, and this is perhaps the most intriguing one. They find a way to reinvent themselves.
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah, maybe they embrace a hybrid model, offering a wider range of fare options and amenities
Right.
to appeal to both budget-conscious and comfort-seeking travelers.
So like a budget airline, but with a little bit of class.
Exactly. It would be a bold move.
It would.
But in this rapidly changing industry, sometimes bold moves are necessary to survive and thrive.
All right. So to wrap things up here,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with today?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the airline industry is a volatile and unpredictable beast.
Yeah, no kidding.
Even seemingly invincible giants can face unexpected challenges.
That's for sure. We've seen it time and time again.
And for passengers, this means you need to be informed and flexible. Do your research, compare prices, read the fine print, and always be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, don't get caught off guard.
And finally, keep an eye on the bigger picture. The Spirit Airlines saga is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Right.
The entire industry is in a state of flux, and the decisions made today will shape the future of air travel for years to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you plan your next trip, think about the factors we've discussed, the potential scenarios, and the questions this whole situation raises.
Yeah.
Will Spirit survive?
Will budget travel evolve?
And most importantly, what kind of flying experience do you, the traveler, want?
Right. Your choices and preferences will play a role in shaping the future of the industry.
Well said. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this deep dive into the turbulent world of Spirit Airlines.
Yes.
Be sure to check out the links to all the source articles in the show notes. And until next time, safe travels.